Hey folks, welcome to Seneca Lake Mysteries, the podcast where we explore the unusual, strange, and unexplained on New York's largest Finger Lake. First, I want to thank everyone for listening, subscribing, commenting, all the feedback, all the supportive words. I'm truly thankful for all of you. I started this podcast. I wasn't sure if a lot of people would dig it, and it turns out a lot of people do dig it. So thanks so much again. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it and tell all your friends about it. And I'll keep digging up more cool stories and talking about them. So before I get into part two of my conversation with Seriah at Willard Asylum Cemetery, I want to go back to the last episode. Seriah and I were discussing how the walking tours had been done on the Willard campus for a few years, and how the final walking tour in 2015 had huge crowds that overwhelmed the site. Now, in our conversation, we weren't sure of what the numbers were and the details around that final tour, so I did some research and just wanted to follow up on that. So the first Willard walking tours were held in 2009, and they were done annually for the next 7 years. And these tours were given by former Willard employees. So started in 2009. By 2014, the tours were drawing about 240 visitors per year. So the tour guides would take groups of 15 to 20 people on each tour throughout the day, and the cost was $10 a person to take the walking tour. Now, in 2015, news of the walking tour went viral on Facebook. So thousands of people around the country and the world learned that one of the largest former asylums in U.S. history was giving walking tours. So when the date of the tour came up, the response was overwhelming. Thousands of visitors made their way to Willard hoping to take the tour. And by 1 p.m., all roads to Willard were closed, and they started turning cars away, and people started having to turn around and go home. Now, it's estimated that around 4,000 people in total showed up in Willard to try to take the tours, but about 2,500 people actually made it to the site and got in line for the tour. So the tour guides tried to accommodate everyone by increasing each tour group from the usual 15 to 20 people to somewhere around 80 to 100 people per tour. So as you can imagine, 80 to 100 people following and trying to listen to a single tour guide and stay on the tour just wasn't doable. So visitors began to leave the tours, kind of wander, spread out across the campus, entering buildings and exploring on their own. Now, some of the visitors entered unsecured, restricted areas that were not on the tour's path and were off limits to all visitors. But thankfully, there were no reports of injuries or any damage being caused by the visitors. But the impact of the massive crowd wandering in and out of these historic buildings was too much for the organizers to handle, and that ended up being the last year that the walking tours were held at Willard. So let's get into the second half of my conversation with Seriah Azkath of the Where Did the Road Go podcast that were recorded on site at the Willard Cemetery earlier this month. We got into some pretty wild topics in the first part. So now in part two, we go even deeper and get into some pretty mind-bending stuff, including ley lines and the power of sacred sites, two topics I've always been fascinated by, and a lot more. I also ended up talking about some of my own experiences and beliefs related to reality and consciousness, the kind of things I've never really gotten into before on the podcast. So that was really cool, and that was a lot of fun. It was a great conversation, and I'm so thankful that Seriah came out and had the conversation with me. If you're interested in Seriah's work, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. There's a link tree there with his photography, his music shows, his YouTube, all his social media. And as always, if you like this show, please subscribe and follow me everywhere. You can find all the information, everything you need at senecalakemysteries.com. And of course, you can reach out to me with suggestions, stories, anything else by sending an email to podcast@senecalakemysteries.com or by calling and leaving a voicemail at 607-307-1167. So thank you again for listening. Thanks again to Seriah for having the conversation with me over at Willard, and let's get to it. When I was, when I first started coming here to visit, and this kind of ties into your stories, in that I believe that there's something about this particular space, the land here, that is different than other places. There's a different kind of energy or something here. Yeah. And when I first started coming here, I would walk around and I talked about this on your radio show, but I haven't talked about it on my show, is that in the late 90s, early 2000s, I started really getting into and interested in earthworks and mounds, the native earthworks and mounds around the country. The mounds, a lot of the mounds are burial mounds, but my interest sort of leaned more towards the ceremonial mounds, and just how mysterious so many of them are. Archaeologists can sometimes say that, well, they were made by the Hopewell people. These were built by the Mississippian people. Yeah. But nobody really knows why they built them, except.
And sometimes when you talk to the Aboriginal culture, they'll say we didn't build them.
Yes.
There's lots of stories of giants. They'll say giants built them. There are also walls,
right,
all over the West Coast and all over the East Coast that they just chalk up to farmers.
Yeah.
But there's no record of farmers building them. There's no reason farmers would build them because they weren't high enough to retain anything.
Yeah.
And some go up and down like walls.
Yeah, and they're in like wooded areas, like high areas, so they wouldn't be creating stone fences for their livestock at the top of a hill that's heavily wooded. Right. I think there's some of those rock walls over in over near Naples and some of the areas over there. Yeah, and then there's the stone chambers in New England. Yep. So yeah, I had a deep interest in these, and within like a 2-year span, I took a couple of cross-country trips with a couple friends of mine, one to Wisconsin and one to Florida, and both of them, we drove down and back both times, and for both of those trips, my friend mapped out, and we stopped at as many earthen mounds and old earthworks that we could find along the routes that we were taking. So during that time, I had the opportunity to visit dozens of these sites. Yeah. And they're all over the country. New York State and New England, there used to be a lot more of them. Yeah. And they were just removed and plowed over and pillaged and the so just looking at that deer again. I thought it was a deer.
Nah, it's Bigfoot.
Okay. Yeah, so these sites are they're all over the country, and over time, as I got to visit more and more of these places, I started to kind of understand. I started to get a feeling when I would go to these places, and it's hard to explain. It's not like some kind of spark goes off in my head and like, oh, this is
a vibe.
I can feel the energy of the sacred. Like, it's not anything like that. Yeah, it's just a vibe. You go there and you go, oh, okay. I can kind of feel why this place would have been ceremonial at one time.
And if they make some place ceremonial, then they're also putting energy into it when they run ceremonies there.
Yes.
So there's a dual factor there. It's probably already a sensitive place, which is why they picked it.
Right.
And on my show, we had talked, one of my theories is, because I like graveyards. I like the architecture and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I've done a lot of graveyard photography, but most graveyards have no obvious activity. Mm-hmm. But this one and the one in Ithaca both do. They're both very old.
Yep.
And I wonder if it was more, this was a sacred place, let's put a cemetery here.
Yeah.
Versus we need to put a cemetery somewhere. Here's an open plot.
Right. Yeah. And there are examples of that are known. There's some in Michigan and Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. If you haven't been there yet, that place is mind blowing. It's a huge complex. There's multiple mounds, and that was turned into a cemetery.
Okay.
But somebody I knew did a lot of research there. He said that there's astronomical alignments. Yeah, it's a really intense place, and that's also that was a place that was there when the Europeans got there, and they said, "Oh, this," I don't know if they looked at it and said, "This is a sacred place. This is where we should bury our dead," but they probably did. I mean, they would have felt the same kind of.
I mean, that's why churches get built over old pagan, sacred spots.
Yep. And these earthworks, whether it's stone earthworks or built from soil, a lot of times you'll see patterns in where they're located. So you'll see them, near a bend in a river. That's one of the places. A lot of times you'll see there'll just be certain existing parts of the landscape, like even Fort Hill in Auburn. Like I think that's near whatever river that is at the north end of the lake. So these places you can, and I kind of picked up as I visited more and more of these places that sometimes you can get a feeling, get a sense like, well, there's a big 90-degree bend in the lake, in the river right here, and then there's a little hill over here. Maybe there's a mound over there. There could be a mound. And I believe that there's still earthworks and mounds that are right in front of our eyes that are probably laying all over New York State, and we pass them every day and nobody stops to think.
Well, they're covered with trees and everything else.
Yep. So
you put the pictures up on your page, right, of the mounds? Or no?
Of the mounds where?
You said you suspected there were mounds here.
I haven't put the pictures up yet.
Oh, okay.
I have some LiDAR pictures, but that was what I was just about to mention. Is that so? When I was visiting here early on, I kept feeling like that I have a feeling that there's a mound around here or some kind of earthwork. I don't know exactly why, but this cemetery it's not only on the right next to the shore of the lake, but there's also a big ravine where a creek runs through. I'm forgetting the name of the creek right now. I think they used to call it Indian Creek. It was also named Risings Creek at one time.
I fell in that creek once.
Did you really?
In the middle of the winter.
Oh.
I was dumb.
You didn't fall down the cliff into it?
No, we were just going through the woods, and I had a walking stick with me, and as we got up to the river, there was a big area where, I forget what they're called, where the water will pool, and then before it goes further down.
Yeah.
And it was negative whatever outside, and I said, I'm going to walk across this. And my friends are like, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm like, no, I got this magic walking stick. I'll be fine. And I got to the middle of it, and I heard thunk, and I watched the whole side just kind of drop, and I'm like, crap. And so I tried to walk carefully further, and it dropped me right in.
Oh.
And luckily, I was able to grab the edge and pull myself back out, but I was soaked. And like I said, it was like -5 out or something.
Oh, my gosh.
So by the time we got to my friend's house, which was like a good half-hour walk, my clothes were frozen.
How old were you?
Probably 16 or 17.
Yeah, you can deal with that kind of trauma when you're 16 or 17. If I fell into a freezing creek right now, I don't know if I'd survive for sure.
Well, also we were, I was just wearing a jean jacket. It was -5 out when I was just wearing a jean jacket, like I like the cold anyway, but we're also used to it because we'd always be walking around.
Yeah. It gets cold here in the winter. Yes.
Back to your LiDAR.
Anyway,
Instead of my stupidity.
Yeah. No. I know. I love that story. So, I was walking around. I just getting a feeling that there was something here. I would kind of walk back to I'm sitting here pointing like people can see where I'm pointing, but I would walk to the kind of the northwestern corner of it, and where it gets kind of overgrown. I was like, I feel like something's back there. I want to go back there. I never really walked I think one time I started walking back there and the grass was like up to my waist and it was there's bugs. It was the middle of summer. I was like, I can't do this now. Probably the best time is to come like in the fall or in the early spring before anything grows in. So I had this feeling, and then I kind of just forgot about it, or I kept it in the back of my mind. And then when I was doing some research on earthworks that existed here in the past, there are some older books written in the 1800s that detail the earthworks and mounds all across New York State and around this area. And lo and behold, I found that there was an earthwork, and it said that it was on lot 93 north of Willard. So lot numbers were back in the 1800s. Like I was like, I don't even know where that is, but if it's north of Willard, I'm like, I wonder if that's even close to the cemetery. So I went online, I did some searching, I found an old map of the town of Romulus. Look at lot 93, and it's right here. Like we're in lot 93 right here. So I was like, yep, there it is. Like that's what I had a feeling about that. And this is the description from the book that I found. This is the only description. There's no other. I mean, these earthworks and mounds were there. And like I said, they would get plowed over. Yeah. A lot of them got just pillaged, like local kids and people. Like, I mean, when you're a kid and you don't have much to do, and it's like, oh, there's a hill over there, and if we dig, we can find arrowheads and bones like that. Yep. When there's no understanding of what you're doing, like that was a natural thing, and that was a common thing that was done. I actually read a story that in the city of Geneva, sometime back in the early 1900s, like some kid went and he dug up one of the old Indian mounds, the mound that's still there, and he found a skull and brought it back to the neighborhood, was showing it to the other kids. So yeah, these places were there, but they're gone, and all we have are, some of these old descriptions. A few of them, there's drawings, but not a lot of them. But the description of this one said, this site is 1/4 of a mile east of Seneca Lake and at the forks of the Risings Ravine. They described the place as once having a distinct wall with holes along the center, which passed from one branch of the ravine to the other, enclosing a triangular spot 50 feet above the stream.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean that has all the hallmarks of being some kind of ceremonial, sacred site. And like you mentioned earlier, nobody knows why these places were built, but you almost always find them built in places that are special places regardless of whether there's a mound there.
Yeah.
So they were places that had a certain vibe or a certain energy to them, and that was why people built the mounds on those spots. And there's all kinds of theories about why they were built. Some people believe that that they were actually built to somehow like focus the energy, or pull the energy from above or below and amplify it in that area, similar to even pyramids. The pyramids all over the world, that these were
they're essentially mounds.
Yeah. And that maybe there was a time where the same technology that went into the pyramids was used by people who they weren't advanced enough with the technology to
didn't have access to the type of rock.
Right. Yeah. Yep. But nobody really knows why they're built. But I do feel like there's something there. There's something important, something that we forgot, and I am endlessly fascinated by these things. And I'm always, anytime I'm going places, and I'm like I said earlier, like I always have an eye out to see if like maybe there's something, a little piece of land, a little bump, a little ridge that looks out of place.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
what did you find on the LiDAR?
Oh, so on the LiDAR, And LiDAR, I don't know exactly how to describe it or how it even works, but it's a mapping technique where they essentially map the land, the ground that's underneath everything. So whether it's, trees or whatever. So if you look at a LiDAR map and there's a house there, you might see, ridges that are dug out. You'll see a square kind of.
Yeah, they found lost rivers this way and stuff like that.
So I found a LiDAR map of this area, and right over here in the ravine, I don't know exactly, because the description says that it was between two branches of the stream, about 50 feet up, and I can't. There's a couple different places it could be, but the place that I think it is, I was looking at that spot, and there appear to be along the edge of it now some kind of mounds or something that's built that doesn't look like it's part of the natural landscape. And also a little further away from that, there appears to be like several round mounds that are there as well. But it can be hard to tell with mounds. It just could be a pile of dirt, like for whatever reason, construction was done or something like that. And also a couple of, there appear to be a couple of mounds back here, like back in the northern end of the cemetery, going further away from here, from where we are now. I haven't had a chance to take a look at those or not yet, but yeah, I get the sense that maybe this cemetery was built because there were mounds, because there was that kind of energy here. And to hear that you had all these experiences here, I imagine other people have as well. It all kind of comes together for me right there.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that makes sense.
I've ended up here twice in out-of-body states.
Here?
Yeah, once intentionally, because the only time I've ever been able to project out-of-body intentionally. And so my other friend who was with us that day, who did see the tree shaking, he called himself the Great Sequoia.
Okay.
And so he would write Sequoia on things just randomly. And we had been up here the day before, and there was a tree along the trail. As we were leaving, he stopped, and I saw him write something. And I didn't think about what it was. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, he probably wrote Sequoia, because that's what he would write. But like some of the bark had been scraped off, so he went to write it with a pen on it. And so the next day, I'm like, I'm going to try projecting. And for the first time, it sort of worked. And I found myself here, and I was moving up over by the hill over by the Civil War graveyard, and it was wet, and I hadn't actually gotten up yet. I was doing this as I woke up, and everything was wet. I didn't realize it had been raining. So that was confirmation one, where I was like, I'm like, everything's wet. Okay. And I'm like, how do I know if this is just my imagination or not? I'm like, I'm going to go look at that tree. So I literally floated very quickly over to the tree, and I looked at the tree, and there was nothing on it. And I went, okay, not real.
Yeah.
And so I snapped out of it. And I talked to him later in the day. I'm like, by the way, what did you write on the tree? He goes, oh, I decided not to write anything. And I went, now I don't know if it's confirmation or not.
Yeah, it could be. I had one out-of-body experience. Years ago, I was in my mid-20s, and I got into Robert Monroe's books.
Oh, yeah.
And I read a few of the books, and I was practicing it, which was every night when I'm falling asleep, I imagine myself standing up. That's like the first step. Like you're laying down, and as you're drifting off to sleep, you keep imagining in yourself the motion of moving up out of your body and standing above your body.
Right.
So I kept imagining that. It never worked. Nothing ever happened. For a couple of months, I was probably close to giving up. And then one time I was laying there, and I was going through that exercise, drifting off to sleep, and all of a sudden, like my whole field of vision got white, And the next thing I know is I'm looking at my bedroom wall because I see the light switch right here. And I was like, oh, I think this worked. I was like, I wonder if I can, I'm going to go up. And I just decided I'm going to go up and see what happens. Mm-hmm. So I went up. It sounds insane, but I went through the ceiling of my apartment. There was an apartment above me. I went through the ceiling, and I went up to the ceiling in the whatever room was above me. And looking down below me, I saw a bunk bed. I had moved through a bunk bed. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the whole thing just got so insane. I was like, this is crazy. And I just, instantly I was back in my body. And then I tried it again and again. I never really.
Were you able to verify there were bunk beds above you?
I was just about to get there.
Okay.
A few months later, there's a leak starts happening into our apartment from the upstairs apartment around one of the radiators. Oh. So I'm like, oh, geez, I got to go tell them. So I go upstairs, I knock on the door, and a young girl answers. And I was like, your radiator is leaking. It's coming into our bedroom down here. She's like, oh, which one? I was like, it's somewhere over there. She's like, is it this one? There was like one in the kitchen or something. I was like, no, it's got to be over. She's like, well, show me, like, see if you can show me where it is. So she brings me in. I go into the next room. It's a bedroom. There's a bunk bed there. I was like, it's the radiator right there. Thanks for letting me in. I mean, what are the chances of me having an opportunity? Why would I go into my upstairs neighbor's apartment ever or get invited in?
I think I would have tried to.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have bunk beds? Weird question.
Yeah, that could go either way though.
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly. I do realize there was another weird thing that happened here that I never thought was weird, but it only really happened around here. We would, and my friend Dave called them horseflies, and they were flies, but they were easily like 2 inches long, and they looked like regular houseflies, except they had pinchers on the end. And he said, oh yeah, they're horseflies. There's pinchers that break through the horse skin, which made sense, sure. I had never seen anything like this. I moved here from Long Island. Horseflies were just slightly bigger than regular flies.
Yeah.
And so we'd see them up here. We'd be walking along, and they'd just zoom around us. And you'd hear them. They'd be like, yeah, and you'd be like, oh, boy. Never got bitten by any of them. And he said, oh, if they bite, they hurt real bad. I don't think he ever got bitten by one. There was one that landed on his back at one point. And as we were walking through the woods, and at some point I drifted behind him a little. I'm like, oh, dude, there's one on your back. And he's like, what? And he reaches back and grabs it. And the thing freaks out and flies off. And he's screaming and running. But, like, it wasn't till someone said, those don't exist. And I'm like, what do you mean they don't exist? And I started looking online. I'm like, oh, the closest thing I can find is a timber fly. That do not exist in this area. It's too cold for them. And they have the mandibles to eat through wood.
Oh.
So I don't know what those were, but I've only ever saw them up here.
And that's huge for a horsefly.
Yes.
That's not a horsefly.
Yeah, well, now I know.
Yeah.
We didn't have the internet back then. He told me they were horseflies. Sure, they're horseflies. That makes sense.
Right.
You guys just had bigger horseflies than we did on Long Island.
Wow.
And I haven't had anyone else tell me they saw them.
That's really weird because just the variety of weird things you've seen up here.
Well, the variety of weird things that's happened in my life.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, like that, and that was something, like I said, I never thought that was weird.
Right.
Like, it was a funny story that he grabbed it.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, when you were talking about over there by mountains, we would hike through that area. They were like hunting trails and stuff. And I remember walking down one of the hunting trails, and it's just going, circling us.
What?
And we're like, what? Oh, don't come over to us. Like, we were both petrified of being bitten by one because the things on them were so big.
Yep. Yeah, and usually if you hear stories of cemeteries, it's shadow people or, apparition moving or whatever. But the things that you've experienced here it's
weird.
none of those things.
Yeah.
It's just like this is a place where just weird things can happen. Monkeys in trees and giant horseflies. Creatures like I don't know,
Something.
monkey-esque something.
Something at least masquerading as a monkey.
Yes. Yeah, that's really insane.
And the fact that I forgot all about that is even more insane. If I hadn't written it down, I wouldn't ever have remembered that.
Yeah.
And then I would have made the connection that, all this happened in like a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It sort of reminds me a little bit of like when you find out later is when I was a kid, I was probably 8, 9 years old. I was fascinated with space and NASA and UFOs and stuff. And I grew up in a little town, and once in a while in the summer, I would go to the nearby volunteer fire department. There was a baseball field there, or a softball field. Mm-hmm. And I would go there and I'd go out to like behind second base, like near center field. And I would lay down in the middle of this field and just look at the stars and just lay there for, I don't know, half hour, an hour, and just, maybe I'll see a UFO, maybe I'll see something in space. I wonder how far away that is. And I would just sit there and kind of let my mind wander. And one night I was laying there, and all of a sudden I saw coming across the sky, like from left to right, there was at first it looked like a star, but it was moving, and it was like moving kind of quickly. It took maybe a second to get across the sky, and then it moved, and then it started slowing down, and then all of a sudden it darted off at like a 90-degree angle. And in my 9-year-old mind, I was like, wow, I just saw a shooting star. I saw a comet or a meteor. Maybe it was a meteor that hit the Earth's atmosphere and bounced off the atmosphere. I was like, wow, that's great. I went home. I told my parents, I'm like, I saw a meteor. It bounced off the atmosphere. They're like, yeah, that's great. Go, cool. And like I
would think your 9-year-old mind would go right to spaceship.
But it didn't. That didn't even enter my mind. And I told my friends, and they were like, okay, yeah, cool. I saw a real shooting star meteor or something. And it wasn't until I was like probably 13 or 14, I was in science class, and we were talking about comets or meteors or whatever.
Yeah.
And has anybody ever seen a shooting star? I was like, yeah, I have. And I explained it to my teacher. He's like, oh, what did it look like? I was like, well, it went here, and then it slowed down, and it shot off in the other direction when it bounced off the atmosphere. And the teacher just looked at me and was like, I don't think that was a meteor or a shooting star. I was like, oh, what was it? He's like, I don't know, but it wasn't that. And then we just like moved on to the next lesson. I sat there going, I don't know then what could it have been? And then it just suddenly it hit me. I was like, oh, I saw a UFO.
Yep.
But for years I just thought I thought I had seen something pretty mundane.
Yeah, until I mentioned the flies on Where Did the Road Go, and people are like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean that's not a thing?
Yeah. All right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about here related to this spot is another little fun fact that I discovered. Aside from my interest in earthworks, I'm also interested in ley lines, the earth grid. And for people who, or whatever people want to call them, spirit paths. But the concept of ley lines is that there are energy lines around the world that encircle the whole globe. They can be small. They can be in a small area. They expand around the whole planet, and along these lines, you'll find significant landscape, whether it's lakes or rivers or mountains, but also sacred sites, ancient earth mounds. I know the theory of ley lines started with Alfred Watkins in England, and he started realizing, all these old mounds and earthen and stone structures here in England, if you look at them on a map, they kind of line up, and they'll line up with churches and churches, landscape, sacred sites in the landscape, and sacred sites that are more ancient.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly it means. I mean, I just don't know, but I see them. I see where it makes sense when you see these laid out on a map. Some people say, well, it's just because that's what we want to see. We want to make sense of these things, or we want to see magic where it's not actually there, and you can just draw lines anywhere around the world and connect places. And I suppose that's true, but I kind of figure even if I'm sitting around looking at a map and staring and obsessing about sacred sites and landscape and going out and exploring the landscape myself, that's still a pretty good hobby. That's still not that's not a bad way to spend your time, to just have that kind of curiosity and wonder about the world.
And it doesn't mean it's not a line, there's not something to it just because you can do it to anything.
Right. So in my as I was investigating and just looking at different things about Seneca Lake, I found a website that has, and I'll put the link in the description because I can't remember the name of it right now. But it's a website. It's an awesome website that has mapping of the whole globe. It has ley lines. It has electromagnetic anomalies. There's like multiple maps that you can overlay on it. And when it comes to ley lines too, there's like different categories of ley lines. There's like different groups of people throughout time who've come up with their own Earth grid, and so there's a lot of different ley lines you can look at on there. So I got curious. I said, I wonder if there are any like major ley lines coming through the Seneca Lake area. There's one that's on the west side of the lake that's actually called the Washington Meridian. So it's at the 77th meridian, and it's the state or the national capital. The U.S. Capitol supposedly has this ley line running through it, and this line goes all the way around the globe, and it runs along the west side of Seneca Lake, pretty straight north-south. But that's not the one I was going to talk about now. The other one I found is a ley line that's called, there's two ley lines that are called 45 degrees from Giza. So it's the Great Pyramid. So if you're looking at the Great Pyramid from above it, it would look like a square, and then the four edges of the pyramid would like make an X, like if you're looking from atop the pyramid. So each of those lines in the X would be the 45 degree ley lines from Giza. One of the lines, 45 degree ley line, runs around the globe, and it runs very close to here. Now the thing about these especially when you're talking about global ley lines, like people speculate that these ley lines, especially the big powerful ones on Earth, are miles wide, maybe 4 or 5 miles wide. So I started looking to see if there were any spots that were within a mile or two of the center of that line. And it turns out that this Giza ley line runs, less than a quarter mile from where we're sitting right now. It goes it's at an angle going north to south, northeast to southwest through this area. And it also touches the bottom corner of the Seneca Army Depot, which is where the nuclear materials were stored for the Manhattan Project. Now this ley line also, as it extends, so if we go from here and we extend across Seneca Lake, it goes right by a old earth mound site in the town of Milo near Keuka Lake. It goes right through the Bluff Point Stoneworks on Keuka Lake. Have you heard of those?
No.
Bluff Point was a 7-acre site. Keuka Lake is kind of a Y shape, so it's like right in the middle of the Y.
Yeah.
On the top of this bluff. It's a beautiful spot. You get a great view of the whole area. This place was discovered, whatever, in the 1800s. It's completely removed. It's gone totally. Like there's nothing left of it. But when it existed, it was 7 acres in size, and it had stone pathways that were running through the site. Some of them were 8 feet wide, a foot high. They were made of stone that were almost in a grid-like pattern. There were big vertical slabs, like Stonehenge-like slabs of stone, and circles of boulders all around this site. And then in between inside the vertical slabs, there were more slabs that were like the floor. They're all gone.
Oh, man.
And it was, even at the time, the archaeologists and scientists who looked at it said, there's nothing like this in the Northeast. We don't know how something this big, not necessarily in the Northeast, like I think America's Stonehenge is out in New Hampshire, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. Somewhere in New England.
So there's some bigger stonework sites, but this site is you don't find this in New York State or Pennsylvania or anywhere like that.
Are there pictures?
No, there's some old drawings, like from up above them, but no, there's nothing left of them.
Wow.
And that must have, the amount of effort it must have taken them to remove those. I think the land is all being farmed now. So I'm sure, it was prime farmland, I'm sure, because it was so far up there. So anyway, that ley line comes through here. It goes by the mound in Milo, the Bluff Point Stoneworks. Then it goes further. So I was looking at this on this website, and I was it's really cool to see how many sites are on there. So it goes through Ohio, and Ohio has tons of earthworks around the whole state.
Yeah.
You could spend months there to try to see them all.
The Serpent Mound in Ohio?
Yes.
Yeah.
This ley line goes by Serpent Mound.
Okay.
It goes by the Fort Hill Earthworks, which are mounds and barrows, which are like earthen walls that are up on a bluff. The Newark Earthworks, which were circular earthworks that had openings, earthen barrows, like walls that were built similar to the one that used to be in Ovid. There used to be a 3-acre circular mound structure in Ovid.
Really?
That was and when they found that in the 1800s, they said that it was covered with trees, like large, old, mature trees were running along the top of this thing. So it was old.
Yeah.
And that's completely gone. But yeah, so the Newark Earthworks, Fort Hill, Serpent Mound. You go a little further on this ley line, Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky, which is the world's longest cave. It's got 367 miles that have been mapped in these caves. La Quemada Archaeological Site in New Mexico, in Mexico, which is from 300 to 1200 AD, a ceremonial fortress complex, stone walls and columns. Then around the other side of the planet in Yemen, there's Throne of Queen Sheba, the Barran Temple, which is intricate. It's got intricate carvings, stone columns. It's a whole complex. The Kingdom of Saba, which is in ancient South Arabia. It's got 7 landmarks on the World Heritage Site list. The city of Mecca, the holiest city in Islam. Oh, and back here in New York State, Mount Marcy is on that ley line, Mount Marcy is the largest mountain in New York State.
Oh, okay.
But I think one of my favorite places, which I hadn't even heard about until I was looking into this, is Mount. I want to say this right. It's an Italian name. It's in Turin, Italy, where the Shroud of Turin was found.
Okay.
It's called Mount Musinè. It's a mountain that has had tons of UFO sightings over the years. And people, the locals, know it as a powerful spot. And at some point, there was this tall slab. I don't know if it was stone or metal that just showed up, and they call it a stele, S-T-E-L-E.
A stele, yeah.
And it was put up, and it has this inscription on it, these words on it written in Italian, and nobody knew who put it there.
Huh.
At one point, the authorities came in, they removed it, and then it just mysteriously reappeared. It's still there. Nobody knows where it came from. The local people believe that huge streams of energy pass from the slab into the city of Turin. But I love the inscription that's on it. So here's the inscription that is translated into English. It says, "Here is the antenna of the 7 electrodynamic points through which, with its living, glowing core, the entire earth breathes, gives life. Here operate the astral entities that were Hatshepsut, Eknaton, Christ, Buddha, Mohammed, Abraham, Confucius, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Francis of Assisi, and even you, if you want to build brotherhood among all nations. Think about it intensively for 3 minutes. Thought is construction."
Nice.
Yeah, that's a nice one. So a lot of talking from me there, but
have you checked into if there's any fault lines running along here?
I have not.
Because UFO sightings and orb sightings generally follow fault lines.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them are earthquake lights, pressure in the rocks. I mean, this has been semi-proven.
Yep.
But obviously, you have what might be intelligent plasma. Because I'm pretty sure there's one running under Keuka Lake that runs down through Elmira and ends up in the Long Island Sound.
Okay.
So, but I'm wondering if there's more. Because at some point, someone told me that New York State is crisscrossed in small fault lines.
Yeah, it very well may be. I know that was one of the theories they had for the Seneca drums too, but then they said that there were no fault lines running underneath the lake.
And New York State's just, when you look at the history of weird stuff in New York State, Whitley Strieber had his the encounters in communion in upstate New York.
Yep.
The Seth material was channeled in Elmira, New York. What's the religion there? The Mormons started in. Is that also Elmira?
Palmyra.
Palmyra.
Yep.
That's right. You had the Fox sisters just outside of Rochester, starting the whole spiritualism movement. And it's just like there's just one thing after another.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I mentioned this on your show, but Seneca Lake, in the early Mormon church, Joseph Smith, there was Joseph Smith and one other man, I can't remember his name. They were the founders, and they moved to Waterloo to Peter Whitmer's farm. They were translating their golden tablets, and the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th Mormons ever were baptized in Seneca Lake. So yeah, Seneca Lake ties into that too as well.
And as Jacques Vallée has pointed out, a lot of what formed the Mormon religion sounds very UFO related.
Yes.
Which is why he started formulating all this stuff as a control system of some sorts.
Yes, right. Yep. Yeah. Passport to Magonia was, when I read that's still like one of the handful of books that just, when I finished it, it gave me a buzz, because I didn't know, I didn't even consider any of that stuff. Like, I was into UFOs.
No one really did. The only other person that was close was John Keel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And for me, I read Dimensions first. And Dimensions, it's that taken a lot further, because he's including, apparitions of the Virgin Mary and things like that. And he's showing, the archetype is the same.
Right. and like the biggest takeaway I got from it, like I said, I was interested in UFOs and what are they, and I kept seeing the name of this book, Passport to Magonia. And what it gave me is this understanding that these are universal human experiences that go on everywhere, and they've been happening forever, and it's feels supernatural, but it's normal. It's like,
well, that's it. There, and I can't remember who said it. I want to say it was Jack Hunter, the anthropologist from the UK, said that these are rare experiences.
mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not that they're supernatural or
Right.
It's just that they're very rare experiences. You don't have them all the time. And then, you know, I know other people who have had a variety of experiences like me, and like still haven't quite figured out what that dynamic is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could be that some people just ignore them.
Yep.
And of course, if you start paying attention to this stuff, you get more of it. But is it that you get more of it, or you're just noticing more of it?
Good question. Good question. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. Is that if you're paying attention to it? But I agree that that people just come up with a prosaic explanation for something weird that just happened.
Yeah.
And they move on with their lives because it's not supposed to happen. That's like, it's not supposed to happen.
And we've talked about this many times on Where Did the Road Go. How much data have we lost because someone had a Bigfoot sighting followed by a UFO sighting, and they only report one of them? Because they're like, no, one of them's crazy enough. If I tell them I had both, they're really not going to believe me.
Yes.
When in reality, that's more likely that people are going to have repeated experiences than not.
Right.
It's when someone has one. I mean, most people have had at least one weird experience. Like even the people I know who are like, no, nothing. Well, there's that one thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And kind of saw a UFO, and it's like, all right, there it is.
Yeah. And even like just coincidences, or just, you know, things. I think everybody's had those kinds of. Just about everybody's had those kind of experiences where you're, you know, halfway across the country and like, all of a sudden you run into somebody that you knew from high school or whatever. Right. Like, what are you doing here? You know, those kind of experiences they're not supernatural, but they're weird.
They make you question how things are connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But what I also liked about that stele of Mount Musinè was just this encouragement to people to like to do this, to think this way yourself, to change the way you think, and
stop thinking of other people as the enemy.
Mm-hmm. And you can use these energies and these forces for good. And that's the other thing that I just wonder about these mounds, as far as just like, what do they mean? And these earthworks and these ancient sites, like, what do they mean? And I feel like there's something we can learn from these old sites, especially the ones, not that we can't, I mean, obviously, you know, if you go to Giza or South America and you see these massive pyramids, you know, there's plenty to be learned from those.
Yes, yeah.
But these earthworks, there's something else about them, and I think that just like recognizing them and talking about them is a positive thing, and maybe it helps get a little closer to.
It's also possible that the people who built these conceived reality completely different than we do. So we're trying to fit them into how we perceive reality, whereas they did not. I mean, when you look at the Great Pyramid, I mean, any of those the pyramids on Giza, I was just talking to the Brothers of the Serpent about this recently. Like, you walk away with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this, but none of them actually fully work. We know it's not a tomb, despite archaeology's insistence, or at least Egyptology's insistence.
Right.
But what is it? You know, and is it even something that we would think of, because maybe the people who built it didn't think the same way we do.
Yep. Very true. And even, with these earthworks for many, excuse me, it's only been the past maybe 25, 30 years that it's become more accepted that they're they're there for ceremonial use.
Right.
They were called fortresses forever.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, you know, there's Fort Hill in Auburn, Fort Hill, and you find a lot of these earthworks called Fort something.
Yep.
But they weren't forts. They weren't defensive. You know, the European mind looked at it and said, "Oh, you built a wall here and a wall here. You're trying to, it's for fighting. It's just for protecting yourself from the enemy." And that's completely the opposite.
And we dig stuff up, and it's a temple.
Yeah, right.
Yes, that's right. Ancient people only made temples, temples and tombs.
Yeah.
So I have one thing, if you want to embrace a humorous moment.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with Willard, but it does have to do with Seneca Lake.
Okay.
And because I found this on I think a Geneva subreddit, someone posted it.
Okay.
And it kind of killed me.
All right.
So they used to have a whale watch in Geneva.
Yes.
On Seneca Lake, which obviously does not have whales.
Right. And
so this guy wrote this. It says, Sunday, March 16th, 2025, David Lewis, Dear Mayor Valentino, ever since I was a young man, and by the way, it is typewritten.
Oh.
I was fantasized about watching whales at Seneca Lake. I once saw a man with a Seneca Lake Whale Watch Geneva, New York t-shirt, and ever since I've been obsessed with witnessing a freshwater whale with my own two eyes. I would often save up my loose change during my youth to pay for a trip to the great city of Geneva, only for my father to steal my paltry savings just to buy Rolling Rock and gamble. Well, now I'm an adult, and with an adult job and adult freedoms, this past summer I decided it was high time to stop fantasizing and start doing. I drove to your great city. I sipped the wine from your surrounding vineyards and took in a show at your opera house. I mingled with your hippies. It was time to do what I came to do. It was time to see the whales. I found a park bench that was dedicated to the sport of whale watching. On it read a plaque, "This bench reserved for whale watching." My excitement swelled as I took a seat, the hair on my arms standing on end in anticipation for the show I have waited 15 years to witness. The first hour passed without a single breach. No problem, I told myself. I'm here at noon. Whales are most active in the morning, evening, and early evenings. I settled in. 2 hours, I watched a couple in love pass by, seemingly too lost in amorous bliss to stop and whale watch with me. Still nothing. 4 hours. I saw two squirrels fight for a place on a branch, once pushing the other off into in an act of attempted murder. Squirrels do not have a terminal velocity. Did I miss the whales during this distraction? I mustn't lose focus. 7 hours. It's getting dark. A homeless man sits next to me. I ask if he too is here to watch the whales. He looks at me as if I'm the drunk one, as if I'm the one who smells of schnapps and urine. He informs me there are no whales to be watched. Mr. Mayor, why would you allow such a lie to be promoted? My entire personality is now based on a fictional species, and I am now perceived as a lunatic. The humiliation is insurmountable. Please write back to inform me if there were ever any whales in Lake Seneca, or if this is a generational lie. P.S. I have included a $1 bill to cover the cost of return postage. I am aware postage only costs 73 cents. Do not send the change back as it jams the UPS sorting machine. And he wrote this like it was 1960.
Right. That's pretty good.
And apparently actually sent it to the mayor.
Yeah. There used to be a whale watch in Geneva.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, imagine the humiliation of having your whole personality revolve around a Seneca Lake monster.
Yeah, he's, I'm sure, making that up. But I hope the mayor got a laugh out of it.
Yeah, I hope so. That's a good one. So, man, thanks so much for doing this. This was a blast.
Absolutely. Yes, it was.
So tell people everything, where they can find everything you do and all that.
Well, wheredidtheroadgo.com is the best place. The other show is thelastexit.org. But if you go to wheredidtheroadgo.com, there's a link tree. And it links to all my photography stuff, to everything I do. It's all linked right there.
All right.
So all the music shows, all the YouTubes, all the social media sites, everything.
All right. So everybody get out there and check out Seriah's stuff. The Where Did the Road Go is right up my alley. I love the show, and I had the opportunity to be on it. That'll be put online sometime in the future.
Soon. I'm like 4 weeks behind putting shows up publicly. I'm very good at putting them up for patrons, but then I lag sometimes on the public broadcast, so it'll be up soon.
Yeah, that happens. All right, so that's it. Thanks everybody for listening, and we're signing off here from this sacred site on the shore of Seneca Lake, Willard Cemetery. We'll see you next time. Well, that's it for this time around. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for listening. And if you have any thoughts on any of the topics in this episode, please let me know. And remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and get over to SenecaLakeMysteries.com and subscribe to the email list so you don't miss anything. A new podcast comes out every month on the 7s. I'll talk to you then.